Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem video. This is postmortem of the Blitz chess game number 47, where I played d4 and we went into the traditional Queen's Gambit declined. It's a very ancient opening and very solid and popular. The most common move here is knight f6. I may let's go ahead and put that on. The most common move for me, I was starting to talk about my position here, is knight f3, and the second most common is bishop g5, trying to get a pin on the knight right away. And I tend to avoid those lines because I don't like having to worry about what do I do if he takes a pawn. But looks like I should probably learn how to play those lines instead of avoiding them. So e3 is kind of a quiet move here. And doesn't really present any challenges. I think it's maybe more interesting in the Slav defense, which is where I got it from. But the Slav would be with the pawn here instead of the pawn there. Yeah, so I've been playing this e3 line, whether it's a Slav or a Queen's Gambit decline. So I think next time I'll try something different. But that's what I played here. e3, bishop e7, knight f3, and you can see we're into pretty much a normal position here, and just a slight advantage for white. So I didn't really throw away my advantage, although maybe black could have played a little sharper there at some point. Let's back up actually just a second. So after e3, yeah, if he wants to challenge my setup here, he could lash out with c5 right away, or bishop d6. Yeah, he doesn't need to play the bishop to e7, which is kind of a more it's a quieter position. It's more active here on d6, and since I haven't played e4, I'm not threatening to harass these pieces yet. So by playing that way, then I get into, since black played that way, I get into pretty much an okay position here. So a6 and bishop d3, and we're pretty much out of the opening book at this point. So let's go ahead and just look at the notation tab. And the game continues on for a little bit in pretty much even fashion until I make a really terrible blunder. Is it here? No, it's coming up real soon. So, but I had a miscalculation right away. I thought I could take here, played d takes c5 first. Maybe if I had played c takes d5 first. Yeah, if I had played c takes d5. Then I would have gotten the isolated pawn. I was trying to create an isolated pawn for black so I could have a target to attack. And yeah, the computer likes the idea of c takes d5. So instead of taking that way, I took the other way. I took e takes d5, thinking I would still get the isolated pawn. But he takes back with the knight and kicks my bishop back. And this, you can see, is now good for black. Although this move b6 is a little bit funny. But anyway, rook d1. And the game continues. And then here, this move is just totally crazy. I was, you can listen to the video, I was talking about it. I was planning to take with a pawn here, and for some reason I took with the knight instead. But if I take with the pawn and he takes with the knight, yeah, eventually he has to retake with the pawn. So I do get my isolated pawn after all. But taking here with the knight first, he can just take back with a pawn and be a piece up. So he let me off the hook by taking back with the knight, and we get into the position that I could have gotten into if I had played correctly. But even in a blitz chess game, you should be on the lookout for blunders. Never assume your opponent knows what he's doing. He can always just have, even if he's got the right idea, he can always just have a finger slip, as it were, and just move the wrong piece. So I always stay alert for those guys. So anyway, after that misadventure, we continue on in a pretty even fashion here. I was trying to disturb his knight because I thought that was kind of a good post for it, and but he finds a good post for it here. So I didn't really accomplish a whole lot with that, honestly. But well, now my bishops have a few things to target, and this is still an isolated pawn, so I have something. But because I had two pieces, well, this bishop was hanging, so I had to move it after that exchange. The queen was on the bishop, so it gives him a chance to chop off my bishop, and the computer rates this as about even. There's sort of compensating advantages and disadvantages. Black has the two bishops, which is an advantage, but he has an isolated pawn here, so his pawn structure is slightly worse. So we continue on. Again, the game stays even for quite a while, almost to the end game, and making fairly logical moves. We're both threatening to mate each other, which is always interesting. Try and stir up some tactics. And at this point here, he decides to trade down. And I can't take back with the pawn. I was thinking I could take back with the pawn here, but this pawn is hanging. His queen is on that pawn, and there's no other defense. So when the bishop takes my knight, I have to take back with the queen. I can't take back with the pawn, and then he can trade queens here, which he thought for a while and then decided to go ahead and do. And I was a little bit optimistic about my chances here, but it turns out that black has a good move right here. And if you think about it for a little bit, you might notice what's wrong with my position. It has nothing to do with the pawns, it has to do with the pieces. Those pieces just lined up, and if the rook comes over here to skewer them, what am I going to do about this? I can't move the king, and I can't move the rook because he'll take the bishop, and I can't move the bishop because he'll take the rook. So the computer suggests bringing your king over to defend. Now, the only good news is that his bishop is trapped. Now, if you look at, that's why I thought I had gotten into a good endgame, was because all these squares the bishop isn't going anywhere. So I have time. Let's see, what's the computer suggest? Rook to c4. Okay, attacking my pawn. Yep, that's not it. King here, maybe, defending. Now bishop to c8, so the bishop can come around. And now king to d2. Why not king to d3? Okay, king to d3, h5. And now I can move my rook. So I can get out of it that way. So a lot of trouble and the game is about even, but still a slight advantage for black. So it's not like rook c8 is winning or anything, but this move f5 is just not as good. And another example of how you have to just keep aware at all times of just random placement of your opponent's pieces and ways to exploit it. So f5, and this helps me, gives me time to reorganize my pieces for one thing. So I take, oh no, actually I played king g3. It says I should take first and then move my rook, or just move the rook right away. Yeah, I was oblivious to this fact that my pieces were lined up like that, and just was playing normal moves. He could still play rook c8 there, and it would still be good. Until finally here I move my rook out, and now I have an advantage. So because he didn't take advantage of the temporary bad position of my pieces, now black's position is slightly worse. And the main reason his position is worse is because of his bishop here. It's hemmed in by my pawn and his own pawn, and so really he's got to move his bishop out like this maybe and attack this pawn. But even so, it doesn't have a lot of space. You can see this pawn is controlling this square. So his bishop is really limited in scope, and this gives me some kind of advantage and a reason to play this endgame for a win. So I put my rook up there, and he plays his rook to d7, which is a mistake. But what's kind of instructive is that it's hard to find a good move for black here, just because his pieces are so tied up. And when his rook moves away, I can take here. So really, to defend the pawn, he has to play rook f6. I was just threatening to just take that pawn, and he needs to defend it. And if I come here with check, he can block that. So what the computer's suggesting, okay, first rook e6, rook f6, and then rook to e8. And you might think, well, what's the purpose of that? But it's a kind of zugzwang. He does not have a lot of good moves. The computer suggests rook f7, and then just bishop b1. This is doing nothing but waiting. I'm keeping the pressure on this pawn. His bishop has nowhere to go. With the rook on the back row here, the bishop can't go to any of these squares. His bishop is completely locked in. And his king can't, his rook can't move, first of all, because similarly, if the rook moves away to a square like here, just rook back to e6, forking these guys, and he can't bring his rook up to defend. So that's just not on. So what else? He can't move the bishop. He can't move these pawns. He can't move the rook. What happens if he moves the rook here? Just bishop takes g6. Yeah, the king is overworked, and bishop takes g6 defends the rook, and just picks up a pawn. So that's cool. So he just has no good moves. The computer suggests g5 here. Let's see. Another try is to move the king. The king has to stay in touch with this pawn. So say the king went there. Just rook to e6. Oh, the king has to stay in touch with this square too to support the rook f6 defense. So okay, so we can't move the king. Okay, so we're down to g5. So it's just a very interesting position that just by putting my rook here and then making a move with the bishop, it just leaves him with no good option. So he has to push a pawn, which he doesn't really want to do. He would really just like to stay there and defend. So g5, f takes g5, h takes g5. Now rook e6. Okay, so now there's no threat, and the rook can get active. And bishop to d3, defending my pawn, hitting his rook. Okay, one. Bishop to e2. So I'm not sure what's going on here. Maybe I'm going to maneuver my bishop to here and to here and try and attack that pawn and get the rook there. It's just strange that the pawns are totally even, and in fact they're entirely symmetric, and the material is even. But his bishop is just slightly worse, being hemmed in by these pawns, and the computer gives it a strong advantage. So let's see, it found rook g6 check as an idea here. King f7, and rook takes g5. Okay, so I pick up the pawn that way. So eventually, after a lot of maneuvering, I can win a pawn. So my opponent didn't play the rook f6 defense. It was just interesting that is probably losing anyway. So he played rook d7, and this allows a much quicker win because I take here with check. And it's pretty much over at this point. I just have to be careful that I don't make another blunder and give up a piece, but I maintain the advantage the rest of the way through the game. It's just a matter of carefully marching these pawns forward, and he can't really stop it. So he resigned at this point. And good game. I thought it was kind of interesting, kind of a silly blunder there at one point, but there's still a few things to be learned from this game. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I'll see you again later. Bye.